She hadn't eaten in 4 days. She wasn't crying anymore. That was the part that broke him. Not the crutch biting into the ice, not the leg twisted wrong since birth, not the coat so thin he could watch her trembling through it from the other side of the street. It was the quiet. A 5-year-old girl planted in the snow outside a packed market, and nobody stopping, nobody glancing down. Michael Dawson stopped. He looked at the plate in his hands, then he looked at her, and he walked over. If this story moves you, please subscribe and follow Emily's story all the way to the end. Drop your city's name in the comments below. Now let's begin. The plate was still warm when Michael placed it on the ground in front of her. Steam curled off the mashed potatoes. The bread roll had gone a little rigid on one side from too long under the heat lamp, but the gravy was thick and the pork chop was real. He'd counted out exact change for it. 47 minutes into a 12-hour shift at the Henley Street construction site, he'd sliced his thumb open on a steel bracket and worked through the rest of the day without telling a soul. Because telling someone meant paperwork. Paperwork meant leaving early. Leaving early meant losing half a day's wages he could not afford to lose. He'd planned to eat that meal alone in the corner of his apartment. Boots still on, standing over the kitchen sink the way he always did. Fast, quiet, no conversation. That plan was dead now. The little girl looked up at him and said nothing. Her eyes were enormous, dark brown, nearly black. Her hair was matted at the back. Her cheeks were so hollow that something physical shifted in his chest when he saw them, like a gear slipping loose inside an engine already running rough. She held a bent tin cup in both hands, the kind restaurants threw out. There was nothing in it, Michael said. She stared at him. He hadn't. But something about the way she looked at him turned the lie into something closer to necessity than dishonesty. Go on. She didn't move. Quote 4, he said. Quote 5. Her hands tightened around the tin cup. A single glove covered her left hand. Her right was bare, fingers gone past red into a grey-white that meant the cold had already settled deep. He crouched down so he wasn't towering over her. She flinched when he moved, just slightly, just the way a child flinches when experience has taught her that adults coming toward her fast means something bad is about to happen. He caught it. He slowed himself down. My name's Michael, he said quietly. What's yours? She looked at the plate. Emily. Barely a whisper. He nodded. That's a good name. How long you been sitting out here, Emily? No answer. He glanced around without making it obvious. The South Market crowd moved the way it always moved. Fast, loud, every face locked on that middle distance that lets a person see nothing they don't want to see. 3 feet to his left, a woman in a fur-collared coat nearly walked into him. She registered his crouching posture, noticed Emily, then looked away so hard it was almost athletic. Michael asked. Emily's bottom lip moved, then she pressed it still. Okay, he said. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to tell me everything right now. Just eat something, all right? The gravy's going to get cold. She looked at the plate one more time. Then she looked at him. And whatever she was searching for, whatever question those eyes were asking, she must have found something close enough to an answer. She set down the tin cup and reached for the bread roll first. She didn't wolf it down. That surprised him. He'd expected desperate, frantic eating. Instead, she bit off a small piece, chewed it slowly, and held the rest in both hands like something that might be snatched away. Like she was rationing it even now, even after he'd told her it was hers. That told him everything he needed to know about how long she'd really been out here. He stayed crouched on the sidewalk while she ate. People walked around him. One man muttered something under his breath. Michael didn't look up. When the bread was gone, he pushed the plate closer. She took up the fork, gripped it in her fist, the way all small children do before someone corrects them, and went after the potatoes. Deliberate, careful. Not a drop of gravy spilled. At some point, a woman appeared on his left. He knew before he turned that she wasn't there out of concern. "Sir?" The voice was tight, controlled. "That child has been sitting here all day. Someone's already contacted social services." Michael looked up. She was mid-60s, wearing a decent wool coat, 2 shopping bags looped over her wrist by the handles. Her face carried that particular expression people wear when they've already rendered judgment before asking a single question. Michael said. The woman's gaze shifted to Emily, then back. "Are you her father?" "No." "Then I'd suggest you let the proper authorities deal with this. Men who—" She caught herself, recalibrated. "It just doesn't look right, is all I'm saying." Michael held her stare for a beat. "She hasn't eaten in a while," he said. "I gave her my dinner. That's all that's going on here." The woman made a sound, not agreement, not argument, and walked away. Emily hadn't paused eating through any of it. She was on the pork chop now, pulling small pieces free with the fork. Michael noticed she kept her left hand, the gloved one, curled around the plate's edge, holding it steady. Or holding it down, the way someone learns to when plates have been knocked away before. By accident, or by intention. He didn't know which. He wasn't certain he wanted to. "Emily." Low voice, neutral. "That woman said you've been out here all day. Have you been here longer than today?" She chewed, swallowed, then, without looking up, 4 days. The words hit him like ice water poured down his spine. 4 days, he said again. One nod, nothing more. "Where did you sleep?" She pointed with her chin toward the far end of the market, the loading docks, where trucks rolled in before dawn and pulled out by 8, where the dumpsters stood in a crooked row, lids hanging half open. Michael pressed one hand against his knee to hold himself still. "And your mama?" he said, careful with every word. "When did you last see her?" Emily set down the fork. She stared at her hands for a long moment. "There was a big snow," she said, "under the bridge, by the train, and she went to go find something, and she didn't come back." Her voice held flat when she said it, a 5-year-old's voice doing its best impression of a fact. Just the sequence, just the order of events, as if stripping the feeling from the telling could strip the truth from the thing itself. Michael said nothing for a long moment. He said finally, he meant it the way men who've buried people mean it. Not courtesy, not reflex, recognition. "Something happened to you that was unfair and real, and I know it." Emily picked up the fork again. She finished the last of the pork chop. Then she laid the fork down neatly on the plate, precise, the way someone had once shown her, and she looked at him, full attention, for the first time. "Are you going to leave now?" she asked. Something behind his ribs cracked clean through. "No," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." He stood up slow. His knees ached. They always ached after a full day on site. Today had been longer than most. He reached his hand down toward her. She hesitated, then she took it. She weighed almost nothing when she rose. The crutch, rusted metal, old, built for an adult and cut down rough, settled under her right arm. She balanced on it with the ease of someone who'd known nothing else her whole life. Her right leg hung at an angle that was wrong in a way that locked every muscle in his jaw. But she stood steady, She was steady, this girl. He could see that now with absolute clarity. 39, he said again. She looked up at him. She said. He picked up the plate. He didn't know what to do with it. Leaving it on the ground felt wrong somehow, so he tucked it under his arm and walked with Emily toward the entrance of the diner. He'd walked from Hattie's diner. 14 tables, a pie case picked half clean by 5 most afternoons, and Carol behind the counter. Carol, who'd been running the place since before Michael drew his first breath. She watched him shoulder through the door. Her eyes went to Michael, then to Emily, then to the plate tucked under his arm. 42. 43, he said. 44. Carol's gaze drifted back to Emily. Emily was staring at the pie case. All right, Carol said. Table in the back. Don't start anything. He wasn't sure what that meant. He nodded anyway and steered Emily toward the corner booth. The one tucked farthest from the glass, walled off on 2 sides by the coat rack and that dead jukebox. Hadn't played a note since 1979. He got her coat arranged, leaned the crutch within arm's reach, bought the coffee, bought Emily a slice of apple pie because she'd looked at that case the way he hadn't seen a child look at food in a long time. Since Sophie. Since the small red boots and the pink beret, and that laugh filling every corner of his apartment. And then one morning, the silence where the laugh had been. He shoved that thought back into its hole and watched Emily eat. She was halfway through the slice when a man at the next table, heavy-set, company logo stitched across the chest of his jacket, the kind who pitched his voice loud enough in public so you'd know you were meant to hear, said to his companion, "That's bold. Letting a street kid just walk in here." Michael didn't turn. The man went on. Emily kept eating. Her eyes dropped to the plate. Something changed in how she held herself, a folding inward, making herself less visible. And Michael felt the anger move through him, fast, cold, the kind that meant it was real. He turned in his chair. He said, quiet, level. The man looked at him. The man said, Michael said. The man pulled a face and turned back to his plate. Carol materialized with a rag, wiping down the table beside them, a table that didn't need wiping, and murmured without meeting either pair of eyes. Social services usually takes 2 or 3 hours to respond this time of day. A beat of silence. Just so you know. Thank you, Carol. I didn't say anything. She drifted back toward the counter. Emily had stopped eating during the exchange. She was watching Michael with those enormous dark eyes. He was mean to you, she said. He's just scared of things he doesn't understand, Michael said. It happens. Emily considered this, turned it over the way children do when they're actually weighing an adult's logic instead of swallowing it whole. People were mean to me outside too, she said. There was a lady who kicked my cup over. My money went in the snow. Michael looked at his coffee. I know, he said. I know there are people like that. Why? I don't have a good answer for that one, Emily. I wish I did. She picked up her fork and went back to the pie. After a few bites, she said, You didn't kick anything. No. You gave me your food. I did. She studied him. Why? He didn't answer right away. His eyes went to the table, then the window. Glass fogged white from the warmth inside. Then back to her. He said. Emily nodded, grave, as if he'd confirmed something she'd already been piecing together on her own. Michael's throat closed. Your mama sounds like she was smart, he said carefully. Is, Emily said. She is smart. Then she looked at the table and went quiet. He let the quiet stand. Outside, the market crowd thinned as the evening pressed colder. Streetlights flickered on, one after the next. Inside Hattie's, warmth crowded in from every direction. The grill, the heating vents, 14 bodies eating dinner. Michael watched Emily sit up straighter as the heat worked through her, watched the grey drain from her fingers, watched the colour returning, slow as dawn. He watched her shoulders settle, just a fraction, down from where she'd been holding them locked, braced the way a person braces when cold and fear have been constants too long. 40 minutes passed before the social worker came through the door. She was young, late 20s. Practical coat, clipboard in hand, the expression of someone who'd already logged a full day and knew, in the rational, exhausted way professionals know, that it wasn't finished yet. "I'm Patricia Wills from Cook County Child Services," she said, stopping beside their table. "Are you Michael Dawson?" "Yes, and this is Emily Carter. That's the name she gave me." Patricia turned her attention to Emily. "Hi, Emily. My name is Patricia. Do you know why I'm here?" Emily's eyes moved to Michael. He gave her a small nod. __quote _84 __, Emily said. Patricia sat. She opened the clipboard. She asked her questions the way people trained for this work ask them. Slow, careful, never leading, reading the child's face more than her words. Emily answered in that flat, factual voice of hers. The bridge, the snowstorm, 2 days of waiting, 4 days outside the market. When Emily mentioned the crutch, Patricia's gaze shifted to it, then to Michael. He said. Patricia wrote something down. Michael considered the question honestly. Patricia studied him a moment, then she wrote something else. She said, she turned back to Emily. Emily stared at the table. She asked, Patricia hesitated. Her voice stayed flat, still factual, but her right hand found the edge of the table and locked around it. The words landed like something dropped from height. Patricia looked at Michael. He looked at Emily. He said. Emily's grip on the table went tighter. For the first time, he could see her working to hold her voice level. Working hard at it. You said you weren't going to leave. You said you weren't going anywhere. The word, the exact word he'd used 30 minutes before. She had kept it, held it like something precious. He felt it land against his chest, physical as a hand pressed to the front of his coat. He looked at Patricia. Quote 103, quote, he started. Quote 104, quote, Patricia said. She meant it. Quote 105, quote, he understood why. That didn't make it sit any easier. He turned back to Emily. Leaned forward until he was closer to her eye level. Emily, he said, listen to me. I'm not leaving because I want to. I'm leaving because the rules say I have to. And I'm going to follow those rules because I need them to trust me. You understand the difference? She looked at him. If I follow the rules, he said, then I can come see you tomorrow. I'll go to wherever they take you. I'll walk in through the front door and ask for you by name. But I can only do that if I follow the rules tonight. Okay? A long silence. Okay, she said. You believe me? She searched his face. Yes, she said, because you didn't make a big thing of it. He didn't understand that right away. Then he remembered what she'd told him about her mother. You'll know the good ones because they don't make a big thing of it. He stood. He pulled on his coat. He wrote his name and phone number on a napkin and handed it to Patricia. Then he wrote a second copy for Emily herself, folded small. She tucked it inside her glove. He picked up the old crutch and looked at it for a moment. Then he held it out to her. She took it without breaking eye contact. "Tomorrow," he said. "Tomorrow," she said. He stepped out of Hattie's diner into the bitter night air of South Market. The crowd parted around him the way it always did, fast, indifferent. Everyone headed somewhere urgent. Michael Dawson stood on that sidewalk a full minute without moving. The cold worked through his jacket. His thumb still throbbed from the cut. His dinner still sat uneaten in a 5-year-old girl's stomach. 4 years he'd spent in this city, being invisible. 4 years eating alone over a kitchen sink. 4 years hauling a weight he refused to name out loud. And tonight, for the first time through all of it, the accident, the funeral, the hollow apartment, the drinking that tried to fill what couldn't be filled, someone had looked at him like he mattered. A little girl on a rusted crutch. Hollow cheeks. One glove. A voice that barely reached his knee. She'd looked at him like he mattered. He turned his collar up against the wind and walked toward the train. He would be at that placement facility when the doors opened. Sleep wasn't coming between now and then. He knew it. He didn't care. He'd made a promise. And Michael Dawson, whatever else was true about him, whatever wreckage he'd carved from his own life, still understood what a promise meant. He arrived at 7:15. The Cook County Emergency Child Placement Center on West Cermak was a brick building soaked in industrial cleaner and burnt coffee. The woman behind the front desk regarded Michael Dawson the way people regard something that doesn't belong. "Visiting hours don't start until 9, she said. "I know," Michael said. "I'll wait." She studied him, still in his work jacket. He hadn't gone home to change. Going home meant sitting down. Sitting down meant not getting back up. He'd spent the night on a bench at the Cermak train stop, not sleeping, running the previous evening through his mind the way you run a machine making a strange noise. Slow, methodical, searching for the flaw. He hadn't found one. That was the thing keeping him awake. He'd given a plate of food to a little girl in the cold. He'd sat with her while she ate. He'd made a promise. That was the full inventory. None of it felt wrong. And the fact that so many people had looked at him like it did, that was something he'd need to sit with for a long time. "Sir," the desk woman's voice pulled him back. "You said you're not a relative." "No, ma'am." "And you're not a guardian of record?" "No." She typed something, studied her screen, typed again. "We have an Emily Carter," she said without looking up. "Placed last night. She's been asking for someone named Michael." Something shifted deep in his chest. "That's me," he said. The desk woman watched him over her reading glasses for a long moment. Then she picked up the phone. Patricia Wills came down 14 minutes later. She looked like sleep hadn't found her either, but she'd changed clothes, putting her one step ahead of him. "Mr. Dawson?" No surprise in her voice. "You actually came." "I said I would." "A lot of people say things," Patricia said. She measured him with her eyes. "Come with me." She led him to a small visiting room, 4 chairs, a table, a window with wire mesh pressed into the glass. She told him to wait. Then she went to get Emily. Emily came through the door on her crutch and stopped the moment she saw him. 1 second, she just stood there. Then she crossed the room faster than he'd ever seen her move, that crutch swinging forward in its efficient, practiced arc. She stopped directly in front of his chair. Her expression was fighting hard to stay composed, not quite winning. "You came," she said. "I told you I would." "I know." A pause. "I didn't sleep." "Me neither." She lowered herself into the chair across from him. Different clothes now. a facility sweatshirt 2 sizes too large, sleeves shoved up past her wrists. Someone had combed her hair. She looked cleaner than yesterday, smaller somehow. Institutional clothes did that to a person. "They gave me oatmeal this morning," she said. "Was it good?" "It was okay." She placed both hands flat on the table. "Michael." "Yeah. What happens now?" He looked at her small hands on the table, then at her face. "I talked to Patricia this morning," he said carefully. "They're going to search for your mama," he told her. "Every shelter near the bridge she'd mentioned. Everything they can do, they'll do." Emily nodded. She already knew that part. "And while they search," he went on, "you'll be here." "I don't want to be here." "I know. The woman in my room snores," she said. "And there's a boy down the hall who cried all night. Real quiet crying, the kind where he's trying to keep anyone from hearing it." She paused. "I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want him to get in trouble, but it was hard to listen to." Michael stared at the table. "Emily," he said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you straight with me, because I'm going to be straight with you." She sat up taller in her chair. "Okay. Is there anybody? Any family at all? An aunt, uncle, grandparent? Anybody your mama ever talked about?" Emily went quiet a moment. "There's an uncle," she said slowly, "my mama's brother. But she didn't really talk about him. She said he—" She stopped. Picked her words with the care of a child who'd overheard adult conversations she was never meant to hear and remembered every syllable. She said he thought he was better than us. "You know his name?" "Richard something. He lives far away. Boston, I think." She looked down at her hands. "He never came to see us." Michael stored that away. "Anyone else?" "No. Simple, final." He nodded slowly. He leaned back in his chair, then said the thing he'd been turning over all night on the bench at the Sir Max stop. The thing with no reasonable justification and every possible complication. The thing he was going to say regardless, because keeping it inside felt like the worst wrong in the room. "I want to apply for temporary foster care," he said. "For you, while they look for your mama." Emily stared at him. "They're going to say no," he said, fast, before she could respond. "Probably. I'm single. I live in a one-room apartment above a mechanic's garage. I work construction. Nobody's idea of a foster parent." "Patricia already walked me through the requirements, and I meet maybe half of them." He paused. "But I'm going to try, if that's all right with you." Emily kept staring. "Why?" she asked. "Because you asked me not to leave you outside again," he said, "and I don't consider a place you got put by accident to be much different." Something moved across her face, something complicated and far too old for 5. Something that had been building pressure through 4 days in the cold and needed somewhere to land. She pressed her lips together. Her jaw went tight. She was not going to cry in this room. Every line of her posture said so, and she would hold that with everything she had. "Okay," she said. Her voice was perfectly level. "Okay." Patricia, when he told her, said nothing for a long moment. Then, "You understand what you're asking?" "I think so." "You understand the board review alone runs 4 to 6 weeks, that she stays here in the meantime, that we conduct a full background check, a home inspection, character references." "I understand." "And you understand?" Patricia paused. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted. Lower. The professional distance narrowed just a fraction. "That people are going to look at a single man requesting emergency foster placement of a 5-year-old girl, and they are going to think things, regardless of your intentions." "I know," Michael said. "Already met a few of those people last night." Patricia held his gaze. Why are you doing this? He'd asked himself the same question on that bench at the Cermak stop, answered it 14 different ways. None of them felt exactly right, and the truest one, the one he kept circling back to, was also the hardest to say out loud to a stranger holding a clipboard. I had a daughter, he said. She died 4 years ago. She was 6. Patricia didn't move. I'm not saying Emily is her, he added quickly. I'm not confused about that. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I just... He stopped, started over. I know what it looks like when a child has run out of options, and I'm not going to be the man who walks past that. The background check came back in 8 days. The DUI from 1983 was there. He'd known it would be. He spent those 8 days working his regular shift at the Henley Street site, visiting Emily every evening during visiting hours, not sleeping, preparing himself to hear no. He sat in Patricia's office and watched her read the file. He did not look away. Tell me about this, she said. I was drinking, he said. I got behind the wheel. I hit another car. My daughter was in the back seat. She didn't survive the impact. Patricia waited. I went through the legal process. I did the time. I've been sober 3 years and 2 months. He reached into his coat pocket and placed a small laminated card on her desk. A chip from his AA group. The 3-year chip, the one they hand you for staying alive in the right direction. I'm not asking you to forget any of that. I'm asking you to look at all of it. Patricia picked up the chip, studied it, set it back down. She asks for you every day, she said. Not an answer. Not yet. Just a fact laid bare on the table between them. I know, Michael said. Carol at the diner told me Emily mentioned me to the social worker 3 times during intake. Patricia went quiet for a long stretch. I'm going to need to see the apartment, she said. The apartment above the mechanic garage on Paulina Street was exactly what Michael had described. 1 room, a pull-out sofa, a kitchen corner with an old gas stove, 2 burners that worked, 1 that didn't. He'd scrubbed the place twice before the inspection. He'd bought a folding cot and positioned it near the window with a small lamp beside it. He had nothing to offer in the way of decor, but the place was warm. Heat worked. Plumbing worked. The locks on the door held solid. Patricia moved through it in about 6 minutes. She opened the cabinet beneath the sink, checked the bathroom, stood in the center of the main room and turned slowly. It's small, she said. It is. The cot will need a proper mattress. I ordered one. It comes Thursday. She looked at the folding cot, then back at him. I'm going to recommend provisional placement, she said. 30 days, supervised. I'll check in twice a week unannounced. You understand what that means? Yes, any drinking, any at all, and she comes back. Understood. And Mr. Dawson. Patricia lifted her clipboard. I need you to understand something clearly. This is not adoption. This is not guardianship. We are still actively searching for family members. Her uncle in Boston has been contacted. If a biological relative steps forward and is deemed suitable, Emily goes with them. No matter how attached either of you becomes. Do you understand that? Michael was quiet. He understood it. He didn't like it, but he understood it. Yes, he said. Emily came home on a Thursday afternoon, same day the mattress arrived. There followed a brief, chaotic 20 minutes. Michael wrestling the cot frame together while the delivery man stood in the doorway waiting on a signature. And Emily stood in the middle of the room, turning slowly, the same way Patricia had, taking inventory. It's small, she said. Everybody keeps saying that. I like it. She turned again. It smells like wood and oil. The garage is downstairs. Sorry about that. I don't mind. She moved toward the kitchen corner on her crutch, studying the stove with genuine interest. Can you cook? I can make a few things. Like what? Eggs, soup from a can, grilled cheese. Emily turned to look at him over her shoulder with an expression that was, for the first time since he'd known her, almost amused. Grilled cheese, she said. That's not really cooking. It involves heat and the transformation of raw ingredients, Michael said. That's cooking. She made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh, but it was the nearest thing to one. And Michael Dawson, standing in his too small apartment with a half-built cot and a delivery man still blocking his doorway, felt something unclench in his chest. Something that had been coiled tight for 4 years. He hadn't heard that sound, that almost laugh, that half-step toward joy, in so long he'd nearly forgotten what it did to the air in a room. It changed the air. He said nothing about it. He signed for the mattress, tipped the delivery man, finished the cot. That evening, he taught Emily how to make grilled cheese on the working burners of the old stove. She stood on a step stool he'd found in the mechanic's storage room and pressed the spatula down on the sandwich with tremendous seriousness, monitoring the color of the bread with the focus of someone performing a procedure she intended to get right. Now? She asked. Almost. Now? Another 30 seconds. How do you know? You'll hear it, he said. Listen. She listened. The sizzle shifted, subtle, almost nothing. Moisture leaving the bread, butter at the edges going from alive to still. Emily's eyes went wide. I hear it, she said. Flip it. She flipped it. Not perfectly. One edge folded up and had to be pressed back down. But she flipped it. They ate at the small kitchen table. The only table. The same one Michael used as a desk when he needed to look at his bills. Emily ate 3/4 of her sandwich and stopped. She stared at the remaining quarter for a long moment. What's wrong? Michael asked. Nothing, she said. I'm just... She looked at the sandwich. I'm thinking about saving it. Michael watched her. For later, she said carefully. In case. He knew what in case meant. He knew it the way he'd known the careful rationing that night at Hattie's. The body remembers shortage long after the shortage ends. The body holds the fear long after the reason for it is gone. You don't have to save it, he said gently. There's food here. There'll be food tomorrow morning. Emily looked at him. Promise, she said. Promise. She ate the rest of the sandwich. That night he pulled out the sofa bed. She slept on the cot by the window. He lay in the dark, listening to her breathing, the occasional thud from the garage below, the distant rumble of the train. For the first time in 4 years, the silence in his apartment wasn't the kind that pressed down on you. It was the kind that meant someone else was in it. He was still awake at midnight when he heard her shift on the cot. Michael, she said quietly, testing whether he was awake. Do you think my mom is okay? He stared at the ceiling. I think the people looking for her are doing everything they can, he said. That's not the same as yes. He nodded in the dark. It's not. Another pause. She used to sing to me, when it was cold, when we were under the bridge. She'd wrap her coat around both of us and sing real quiet so nobody else could hear. I keep trying to remember the words, but I can only remember how it sounded, not the actual words. A moment passed. That's okay, he said. Sometimes the feeling of a thing matters more than the exact words. Emily went quiet. Then, Michael, yeah, thank you for making the room. He looked at the ceiling. At the water stain near the light fixture he'd been meaning to patch for 2 years. At the dark, which was softer than it usually was. "Thank you for being in it," he said. She didn't say anything after that. A few minutes later, her breathing slowed and deepened. She was asleep. Michael Dawson lay there in the dark and thought about the things that get taken from you. The people, the chances, the versions of yourself you shed along the way. He thought about the strange math of grief, how it never shrinks, how instead you sometimes grow larger around it, large enough to carry other things beside it. He wasn't fixed, he knew that. Still the man who'd made the choice that killed his daughter. Still the man who'd drowned 3 years of himself in a bottle before he understood that drowning solved nothing. Still living paycheck to paycheck above a mechanic's garage. Nobody's idea of safe or stable or good. But somewhere between last Thursday and tonight, a 5-year-old girl with one crutch had looked at him like he was worth staying near. He was going to be very, very careful not to waste that. He closed his eyes. On the cot by the window, Emily slept. Outside, wind moved through South Market, rattling the metal shutters on closed food carts, pushing a newspaper down the gutter in small, skipping jumps. 3 blocks away, a patrol car drifted slowly past the diner where it had all started. Carol was wiping down the counter for the last time tonight, thinking, in the back of her mind, about the man and the little girl and the plate of food. And in Boston, in a brownstone office with the lights still burning past 10, a man named Richard Carter was reading a fax that had just come through from a Cook County social worker. His expression as he read it was not the expression of a man receiving good news. It was the expression of a man who had been waiting for exactly this, who had already decided what he was going to do about it. Richard Carter called the Cook County Child Services office at 8:15 the next morning. Patricia delivered the news that same afternoon, dropping in unannounced the way she always did. She settled at the small kitchen table with her clipboard and her coffee. Said it straight, no cushion, no apology, the way she handled everything. A man had come forward, identified himself as Emily's maternal uncle. He'd caught the story on a local news broadcast. Some reporter had pulled it from the police blotter. Disabled child found abandoned at South Market, placed with a construction worker pending family review. Patricia paused. It aired on WGN 2 nights ago. "I didn't know about any news story," he said. "Most people don't know when they're in one." She set down her coffee. "Mr. Carter is flying in from Boston on Friday. He's retained a family law attorney. He's requesting emergency kinship placement, and he's challenging the provisional foster arrangement." The apartment went still. Near the window, Emily sat on her cot, working through the homework sheets the placement center had sent home with her. She moved through them slowly, carefully, the way she moved through everything, tongue pressed to the corner of her mouth in concentration. Michael kept his voice even. "On what grounds?" he said. "On the grounds that a biological family member with financial resources is inherently preferable to a single male non-relative with a criminal record and a one-room apartment." Patricia spoke without inflection, just laid the argument out like something on a table. "His attorney has already filed a motion." Michael sat quiet for a moment. "What does Emily know?" he asked. "Nothing yet. That's your call. But she'll need to know before Friday." After Patricia left, Michael stayed at the table a long time. Didn't move. Emily finished her sheets and carried them over, set them down in front of him with the gravity of someone submitting work for inspection. "Is something wrong?" she asked. He looked at the pages. Neat work. Her handwriting still uneven, the hand of someone learning, but every answer correct. All of them. "These look good," he said. "Michael," her voice was patient, precise, the voice she used when she knew he was dodging. "Is something wrong?" He looked at her. "Your uncle is coming," he said. "Richard Carter, from Boston. He saw you on the news, and he's flying to Chicago on Friday." Emily didn't move. "He wants to take you with him," Michael said. "He's hired a lawyer. He's going to argue that because he's family, you belong with him." Nothing. Emily stood perfectly still, both hands gripping the crutch, watching him. "I wanted you to hear it from me," Michael said, "not from anyone else." Silence filled the room. Then Emily spoke. "My mama didn't want to talk to him." "I know. She said he made her feel small." Emily's voice went flat, measured. She said every time she talked to him, she felt like something was wrong with her for being poor, like poverty was a decision she'd made to shame him. Michael said nothing. "I don't want to go to Boston," Emily said. "Then fix it." No anger, no drama, same tone she used for everything, a fact requiring action. "The burner on the stove that didn't work, you fixed that. The wheel on my crutch that was loose, you fixed that. Fix this." Michael looked at his hands on the table. "I'm going to try," he said. "But Emily, I need you to understand something. The judge is going to hear from a lot of people before he makes his decision. Some of them will say things that sound perfectly reasonable about why you should live with your uncle. I need you to be honest with the judge about what you want, not what you think I want to hear, what you actually want." Emily held his gaze a long moment. "I want to stay here," she said. "That's not a complicated answer." Richard Carter arrived Friday afternoon. Michael wasn't there for it. He was on the Henley Street site, finishing a pour that couldn't wait. Phone in his chest pocket, watching concrete settle while his mind turned over a custody hearing 11 days out. He got back to the apartment at 6. Patricia's car sat at the curb. Next to it, a black sedan, rental company sticker on the bumper. He took the stairs 2 at a time. Patricia was sitting in one of the kitchen chairs. Emily sat on the cot, crutch laid across her knees, homework sheets turned face down beside her. When Michael stepped in, she gave him a look he'd never gotten from her before. Not fear, something neighbouring it, something prepared for impact. Richard Carter stood near the window. Tall, well-dressed in that particular way money has when it doesn't need to prove itself. The watch, the coat, the haircut. He looked like Emily around the eyes, and that was the most unsettling thing about him. Same dark brown, slightly wide set. Same quality of stillness behind them. "Mr. Dawson," he said, extending his hand. Michael took it. "I appreciate you being willing to meet," Richard said. "I know the situation is complicated." "Doesn't feel complicated to me," Michael said. Richard looked at him, then at Emily, then back to Michael. "Could we speak privately?" "No," Emily said from the cot. Both men turned to her. "Whatever you're going to say to Michael, you can say in front of me. I'm the one you're here about." Richard blinked. He hadn't been ready for that. Most people weren't. Michael had noticed she deployed it with the precision of someone who knew exactly which tools worked best. "Emily," Richard said carefully, "I know we don't know each other well." "We don't know each other at all," she said. Silence held the room a moment. "That's true," Richard said. He pulled out the other kitchen chair and lowered himself across from Patricia. Folded his hands on the table, a deliberate, measured gesture. Years of boardrooms lived in that posture. Michael noticed it instantly, disliked it instantly, and kept both reactions off his face. "I want you to know I understand I haven't been present. Not in your life. Not in your mother's. That's something I carry." "Okay," Emily said. The flatness of it caught Richard off guard. He pressed on. "I have resources," he said. "A house in a good neighborhood, schools, medical care." His gaze dropped to Emily's leg, then snapped back up. He caught himself. "And specialists." Michael held his expression still. Richard said, looking at him now. Michael said. Richard studied him. Michael said. Quiet filled the room. Richard held Michael's gaze for a long moment. Then he said something Michael hadn't anticipated at all. He said, softly. The boardroom voice, gone. Just a man's voice, stripped bare. "I know that's what it is. I can see it." A pause. "I'm not here to destroy that." Michael waited. "I'm here because she's my sister's child, and I've done nothing, for either of them. Ever. I have to try now, even if it's too late." He stared at his own hands on the table. "Even if she doesn't want it." Emily watched her uncle from the cot. Her expression had shifted. Not softened, changed. She was working through something. "Why didn't you ever come see my mama?" she asked. Richard went quiet. "Because I was ashamed," he said, "of her situation. Then I was ashamed of being ashamed. And by the time I'd pushed through enough of that to actually act, years had gone by. I didn't know how to begin." "She cried sometimes," Emily said, "at night, when she thought I was asleep. I think it was because she was lonely." Richard looked at the table. "I know," he said. His voice had hollowed out. "I know." The custody hearing was set for the following Thursday at Cook County Family Court on West Washington. Michael spent the days between grinding through his shifts, coming home, helping Emily with her homework, making dinner, always something real now. He'd been teaching himself 3 or 4 actual meals from a paperback cookbook Carol had pressed into his hands, and lying awake at night, cataloguing every last thing he couldn't offer. He couldn't offer a house. He couldn't provide a school district equipped to support a child with a physical disability. Couldn't offer the specialists Richard had named. He'd researched it now, what Emily's leg would require going forward. The answer was significant, expensive, entirely beyond what a construction worker's wage could cover. He lay in the dark and forced himself to be honest about it. That was the hardest kind of honest there was. Tuesday night, 2 days before the hearing, a knock came at the apartment door at 9. Emily was asleep. Michael opened it to find Richard Carter standing alone in the hallway. No lawyer, no clipboard. "Just a man in a coat that probably cost more than Michael's monthly rent," Richard said. Michael stepped back. Richard entered and stood near the door. His eyes moved across the room. The cot by the window where Emily slept. The kitchen corner with the cookbook open on the counter. The crutch leaning against the wall within Emily's reach. "She keeps it right there," Michael said quietly. "Every night, so she can get up without having to ask for help." Richard studied the crutch for a long moment. Then he turned to Michael. "I want to offer you something," he said, "and I need you to hear the whole thing before you respond." Michael crossed his arms. "Go ahead." "I'm not going to fight you for her." Richard's voice was steady. __quote _162__. A brief pause. __quote _163__. Michael said nothing. Richard continued. He reached into his coat and produced a folded paper. Michael looked at the paper. He said slowly. Richard said. Michael stood very still. He asked. Richard held his gaze. He set the paper on the kitchen table. After Richard left, Michael stood in the middle of the apartment, dark all around him. Emily's breathing from the cot came slow and even. He picked up the paper, read it again. Then he folded it, set it back on the table, lowered himself into the kitchen chair, and pressed his face into his hands. Not because it was a bad offer, because it wasn't. Because the man who'd done nothing for years had walked into a stranger's apartment and offered the one thing Michael couldn't give Emily, a future unshackled from what a construction worker could afford. Done it quietly, no lawyer present, no audience. And the worst part, the part lodged in Michael's chest like a stone, was that Emily deserved that future. Completely. He sat there a long time. Then a small voice drifted from the direction of the cot. Emily said. Michael looked up. She was watching him, crutch already in hand. She said, he said. Emily swung her legs off the cot and sat up straight. Quote, 180, she said carefully. Quote, 181. Quote, 182, Michael said. Quote, 183. Quote, 184. Quote, 185. Quote, 186. Quote, 187. She gestured toward her leg with a precision that required no words. Michael's throat closed. Emily, I'm not broken, she said, fast, firm, the way she always said it. The way she'd clearly been telling herself for years before he ever showed up. Quote 190, quote. She pressed her lips together, eyes dropped to the table. Not a question. His voice came out rougher than he meant. Emily went quiet for a moment. Then she looked at him straight on with those enormous dark eyes. Quote 194, quote. Quote 195, quote. Quote 196, quote, he said. Quote 197, quote. One nod. She settled the crutch beneath her arm, lay back on the cot. Quote 198, quote. Quote 199, quote. He sat at the table another hour after that. The folded paper in front of him. Street noise rising through the floor from the garage below. A distant train. The city grinding through another ordinary night, blind to the fact that two people in a one-room apartment above a mechanic shop were quietly, carefully attempting to build something no blueprint existed for. Thursday morning came faster than either of them was ready for. In Courtroom 7 of the Cook County Family Court on West Washington, the judge cracked open a file. He studied the parties gathered before him, then spoke the words that would open the final chapter of this particular fight. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 200, underscore, underscore. The courtroom was smaller than Michael had expected. He'd framed enough buildings in this city to know that the size of a room rarely matched the weight of what happened inside it. Still, he'd pictured something grander. High ceilings, long benches, the kind of space that declared its own authority. What he got was fluorescent light and water-stained ceiling tiles and 3 rows of hard wooden seats behind a low railing. A clerk typing without looking at the keyboard. A bailiff who'd stood post long enough that nothing registered on his face anymore. Richard sat at the table to Michael's left with his attorney, a woman named Diane Marsh, early 40s, the kind of composed that came from winning most of the fights she walked into. Michael had a public advocate named Gerald Tate, competent, overworked. He'd reviewed Michael's file for the first time 40 minutes earlier in the hallway. Patricia Wills occupied the first row with her clipboard. Emily sat beside her in a chair slightly too tall for her frame, crutch laid across her knees, wearing the green dress someone at the placement center had donated to the clothing closet. She watched Judge Brennan with the same serious, measuring attention she gave everything. Judge Brennan, 60-something, reading glasses, the kind of face that had rendered 1,000 decisions and carried most of them in silence. He opened the file, read for a moment, looked up. Quote 201 __. Diane Marsh spoke first. Precise, thorough, fair. Michael had to admit she laid out Richard's case without embellishment and without attack, which he'd anticipated and feared more than hostility. Hostility could be met head-on. Reasonableness was harder to counter. She detailed Richard's financial stability, his property in Boston, the school she'd researched, the same one Richard had mentioned 2 nights ago, its specialized staff and track record with children who had mobility challenges. She outlined Emily's medical needs going forward. Orthopedic consultations already scheduled pending the hearing's outcome. Surgical options that existed and what they might accomplish. Then she said, quote 202, quote 203. Gerald Tate presented Michael's case with the tools he had. The sobriety record, the character references Carol had gathered from half the businesses on South Market, the home inspection Patricia had filed, Emily's own stated preference. He was thorough. He was also fighting uphill, and every person in that room knew it. When Gerald finished, Judge Brennan studied both tables for a long moment. Then he said, quote 204. Diane Marsh began objecting, something about protocol for child testimony. Judge Brennan glanced at her once over his glasses. She went silent. Patricia brought Emily forward. The girl crossed the full length of the courtroom on her crutch. She didn't look at either table. Her eyes held the judge, and she stopped before his bench, tilting her face up. "Hi, Emily," Judge Brennan said. He'd removed the reading glasses, Emily said. Emily nodded. He gestured toward Richard. Emily turned to her uncle. Richard sat perfectly still. Emily said, Richard's attorney looked momentarily caught off guard. Richard himself wore the expression of a man absorbing something he'd carried for years and finally setting it down. The judge indicated Michael. Emily looked at Michael. Her eyes never left him as she spoke. She said, the clerk's fingers went still on the keys. He got up every morning and went to work, and he came home and he made dinner, and he helped me with my homework, Emily continued. Her voice stayed flat, factual. That same quality of reporting, what happened rather than performing it. He taught me how to make grilled cheese. He fixed the wheel on my crutch because it was wobbling. He told me there would be food tomorrow, and there always was. The bailiff stared at the floor. Emily, why do you want to stay with Mr. Dawson? The courtroom went dead quiet. Emily's knuckles whitened on the crutch. She looked at the judge with an expression forged by 4 days in the cold. 2 days beneath a bridge. The slow, deliberate labor of learning to trust again after everything had been stripped away. She said. The judge asked softly, for me to finish eating. She said it plainly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Like among everything that could be spoken, this was the one thing that mattered most. That first night, he sat on the sidewalk in the cold, and he didn't rush me, and he didn't take the plate back, and he didn't glance around to see who was watching. He just waited. Her jaw tightened. Everybody looked away. The whole market, hundreds of people, they all looked. She let those words settle. Then he stayed. Something moved through the room, not loud, not dramatic. The particular physical silence of a group of people absorbing something true. The kind of stillness that descends when a thing has been said that can never be taken back, that lands somewhere in the chest and refuses to leave. Diane Marsh stared at her notepad. Her pen hadn't moved. Gerald Tate pressed a hand over his mouth. Richard Carter studied his own hands on the table. Judge Brennan removed his glasses entirely, set them on the file before him, pressed 2 fingers against the bridge of his nose for a long moment. Michael watched him do it, and he understood. The judge was doing what men do when something reaches them in a place they hadn't braced for. "Thank you, Emily." The judge spoke. His voice held steady, professional. But something underneath it had shifted from what it was 10 minutes before. Patricia stepped forward and walked Emily back to her seat. Judge Brennan put his glasses on again. He studied the file. He looked at both tables. He looked at Emily in the oversized chair, crutch laid across her knees, hands folded in her lap, her attention completely present. "I'm going to take a 30-minute recess," he said, "and then I'm going to rule." Those 30 minutes stretched into something closer to 400 years. Michael sat in the hard chair in the hallway outside Courtroom 7. Gerald Tate sat beside him, saying things that were probably useful and practical. Michael heard none of it. He watched Emily. She'd slipped off her chair and settled beside Patricia on the bench across the hall, homework sheets spread out, pulled from her coat pocket. Because that was who she was, a child who packed homework for a custody hearing. A decision was being made about her entire life, and she could do nothing about it for the next 30 minutes. So she did the thing she could control. Michael looked at her, and something vast and silent landed in his chest. He looked at Richard Carter, far end of the hallway, hands buried in his coat pockets, not talking to his attorney, not checking his phone, just standing there, a man staring at something years behind him. Michael stood up. Gerald said something. Michael said, quote, 224, and walked the length of the hall. Richard's eyes found him as he approached. "Whatever happens in there," Michael said, voice low. "That school she mentioned, the North Shore one. I want to know more about it." Richard measured him for a moment. "I'll have the information sent to Patricia Wills," he said. "Thank you." "She's extraordinary," Richard said. His gaze had drifted to Emily across the corridor, lips moving against her homework sheets. "My sister was the same way, completely unsentimental about the things that mattered." Michael looked at Emily too. "What happened between you and your sister?" he asked. No edge to it, just the question. Richard went quiet a long time. "She fell in love with a man our family didn't approve of," he said. "Emily's father?" "He left before Emily was born. I won't defend that, but I'd made it very clear what I thought of her choices, before he left and after, and she was—" He stopped. "She was proud, the way poor people are proud when they have to be, because it's the only thing nobody can take from them. She stopped calling. I told myself that was her decision." He paused. "It wasn't her decision, it was mine, and I let her carry it." Michael said nothing. "I've had this conversation with myself every day since I got that fax," Richard said. "Every version of it. It doesn't get easier." He looked at Michael. "Does it? The ones you can't fix?" Michael thought of a car, a country road, the sound of glass. "No," he said. "It doesn't get easier. You just get more honest about it." Richard nodded slowly. The bailiff pulled open the door to Courtroom 7. "Judge is ready," he said. Judge Brennan returned to the bench, settled his glasses, opened the file. He looked out at the room a moment before speaking. "I've read this record carefully," he said, "and I've listened carefully to everyone present, including Emily. I want to say something before I rule, and I want both parties to hear it clearly." He let the silence hold. "This court does not exist to reward good intentions or punish complicated histories. It exists to determine what serves the best interest of the child." Michael held perfectly still. "Mr. Carter is a biological relative with significant resources and a genuine desire to repair damage he acknowledges causing," the judge said. That is not nothing. This court takes it seriously. He looked at Richard. Mr. Dawson is a man without resources, without a conventional domestic situation, and with a history that gives this court pause. That is also not nothing. This court takes it seriously. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. But this court also takes seriously, Judge Brennan said, the words of a 5-year-old child who has been cold and hungry and alone, and is found in a one-room apartment above a garage, something she has accurately identified as home. He closed the file. Provisional custody is awarded to Michael Dawson, continued with full review at 90 days. Gerald Tate exhaled beside him. Diane Marsh wrote something on her notepad. Richard Carter looked at his hands. Then he raised his eyes. And he nodded, once, slow, deliberate. The expression of a man who hadn't gotten what he came for, and had gotten what he needed instead. Emily, from her chair beside Patricia, was looking at Michael with an expression he would carry the rest of his life. Not triumph, not relief. The quiet, certain look of someone who had been telling the truth all along and had waited patiently for the room to catch up. He went to her, crouched down in front of her chair the same way he'd crouched beside her on the sidewalk outside South Market. So he wasn't standing over her, so they stood eye to eye. She could see his face without tilting her head. __quote _252 ___, he said. And then, without ceremony, without a word of warning, with that same quiet directness she carried into everything, Emily Carter wrapped her arms around Michael Dawson's neck and held on. He placed his hand on the back of her head, said nothing. There was nothing to say that the moment wasn't already saying better on its own. After a beat, Emily pulled back, straightened herself on the chair, picked up the homework sheets beside her, folded them, tucked them into her coat pocket. Across the room, Richard spoke quietly with Patricia. Michael watched him hand her a card, his contact information, his attorney's number. The kind of card that said, "I'm not vanishing again." Patricia accepted it and wrote something in her notes. In the hallway near the elevator, on the way out of the courthouse, Richard fell into step beside Michael. "The orthopedic consultation I scheduled," he said, voice low. "It's at Children's Memorial, next Tuesday, 2 o'clock. Already confirmed." He paused. "If you want to take her, the appointment is yours." Michael looked at him. "I want to take her," he said. Richard nodded, pressed the elevator button. The doors slid open. Richard stepped in. Michael and Emily stayed in the hall. As the doors began closing, Richard looked at Emily. "I'd like to come visit sometime," he said. "If that's all right." Emily gave the question her full, serious attention. "You can come for dinner," she said. "Michael makes grilled cheese." Something moved across Richard Carter's face, somewhere between grief and gratitude. The complicated relief of a man offered a door he believed he'd sealed shut forever. "I'd like that," he said. The elevator doors closed. Emily looked up at Michael. "Was that okay?" she asked. "Inviting him?" Michael thought about it. "Yeah," he said. "That was exactly okay." They walked out of the Cook County Family Court on West Washington into a February afternoon that was cold and grey and smelled like exhaust and coming snow. Emily moved beside him on her crutch in that efficient, practiced rhythm. Michael walked beside her, hands in his pockets. Neither of them spoke for half a block, because neither of them needed to. "Can we stop at Hattie's?" "Yeah," Michael said. "We can stop at Hattie's." "I want pie." "Then you'll have pie." She nodded, satisfied. They walked on, the city moving around them the way it always moved. Fast, indifferent, everyone going somewhere urgent, and for the first time in a very long time, Michael Dawson was going somewhere he wanted to be. But the hearing being over didn't mean everything was settled, because 3 days later, Patricia Wills called Michael at 7 in the morning, before his shift, and her voice when he answered was the careful voice she used when she was about to say something that required him to sit down. Quote, 272, quote, she said. Quote, 273, quote. He didn't tell Emily right away. He sat with it for 20 minutes after the call ended. Sat at the kitchen table with his coat still on and his coffee going cold. Patricia's words running on a loop in his head. They found Emily's mother. The specifics had come out in clipped, careful sentences. A woman matching Sarah Carter's description had been admitted to Cook County Hospital 8 days prior. Hypothermia, severe. She'd been unconscious for most of that time, unable to identify herself. A nurse had finally recognized the name from a bulletin the social services office circulated. She was alive, she was going to be all right. And in 48 hours, pending medical clearance, she was going to want to see her daughter. Michael sat with all of that. He was honest with himself about what he felt, which was complicated and not entirely noble. He sat with that too, until he'd worked through enough of it to cross the room to the cot by the window where Emily was still asleep. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder. She was awake instantly, the way children who'd slept in unsafe places learned to be. "What's wrong?" she said. "Nothing's wrong," he said. "I need to tell you something." Emily sat up, reached for the crutch without looking. Muscle memory, automatic, and settled it under her arm even though she was still on the cot. A habit of readiness. He told her straight. No softening, no building up to it. Emily had never taken well to gentle handling. He'd figured that out weeks ago. So he gave her Patricia's words in the order Patricia had spoken them, and he watched Emily's face the whole time. She went still, completely still. Emily said. Emily stared at the wall across from the cot. Something was working through her. He could see it traveling across her features, the way weather crosses open land. Relief. And something else beneath it, tangled up in the relief, harder to name. Underscore, quote, 280, underscore, Emily said. No anger in it, just the blunt precision she brought to facts she hadn't sorted out yet. She didn't come back, Michael said. That's not the same as leaving. It felt the same. I know it did. Emily went quiet. A beat passed. Is she going to take me back? I don't know yet, he said. That's a conversation a lot of people still need to have. Patricia, the court, your mama, all of them. He paused. But I promise you, whatever happens, you're going to be okay. You hear me? Emily looked down at her hands resting on the crutch. Are you going to be okay? The question caught him from the side. Her questions did that sometimes. He hadn't been ready for it. He said. She fixed those enormous dark eyes on him. She didn't fully believe him. She was 5 years old, and she was right not to. Okay, she said anyway. They went to the hospital on a Thursday morning. Michael, Emily, and Patricia, who drove them in the county car and barely spoke on the ride over. Michael was grateful for that. Emily sat in the back with her crutch laid across her knees, watching out the window. Silent. The hospital corridor carried that smell all hospitals carry. Antiseptic on the surface. Something underneath it. Something deeper. Harder to place. Underscore, quote, 314, she said. No hostility in it. The directness of someone who'd learned to read situations fast, because situations never waited. Nothing, Michael said. Everyone wants something. Then I want her to be okay, he said. That's the whole list. Sarah studied him with those dark eyes, so much like Emily's it was almost disorienting. Sarah said. Michael said nothing. He said. Sarah turned to Emily. The girl watched her mother with that careful, composed attention, listening to every word, weighing every pause, the way she always listened. Underscore, quote underscore, 323, underscore, Sarah said softly. Emily climbed down from the bed, got her crutch settled, walked out without a word. Sarah waited for the door to close. Then she said, Michael waited. Sarah went on, her voice held steady. But keeping it there cost her something visible. Quote, 327, quote, 328, quote, 329, quote, Michael said. Quote, 330, quote, she said. Quote, 331, quote, 332, quote, 333, quote, 334, quote, Michael said. She looked up. Sarah was quiet a long time. She said, her eyes found his directly. Simple words, nothing simple about their weight. Michael said. Sarah said. A pause. Her voice hardened on that word. The specific hardness of someone drawing a line they meant to hold. Quote, 345, quote. Michael looked at the floor, then at Sarah. Quote, 346, quote, he said. Quote, 347, quote. Sarah pressed her lips together. She said. A slow exhale. He said. The months that followed were not simple or easy or free of pain, because real things rarely are. Sarah recovered slowly enough that bad weeks came and setbacks. A stretch in April where Michael brought Emily to the hospital 3 times. Each visit left the girl quiet in a way that took days to ease. Richard came through on every promise he'd made. The orthopedic consultation at Children's Memorial led to a surgical plan. The procedure came in March. Emily met it with the same steady composure she brought to everything. 6 weeks in a boot cast afterward. Then back to her crutch, but with a different quality of movement. Something slightly easier. Something that made the surgeon's talk of future progress feel like more than optimism. The North Shore School had a waiting list. Richard made a call. Emily started in September. She came home the first day, sat at the kitchen table while Michael cooked dinner and talked for 45 minutes straight. About the ramp at the entrance, wider than any ramp she'd ever used. About the teacher who'd asked on the first day not what was wrong with her leg, but what worked best for her. About a girl named Denise who sat beside her and shared her lunch. Because Emily had forgotten hers and hadn't said anything, and Denise had noticed anyway. Michael stood at the stove and listened and said the right things at the right moments. Something enormous and quiet moved through him. Something he had no name for. He still didn't drink. 3 years and 8 months became 4 years. Tuesday nights he went to his meetings. Fridays he went to a shelter on South Halstead. Patricia had connected him with the place. They needed someone who could fix what was broken and didn't require applause for doing it. He repaired locks, replaced busted cots, showed up every single week. After a while, the staff stopped treating him like a volunteer, started treating him like he belonged there. That distinction carried more weight than he'd anticipated. One Friday night in November, a woman walked in with a boy on crutches. 7 years old, both legs affected. The crutches too tall for him. His eyes running the same arithmetic Emily's had run on that first sidewalk, scanning the room, marking the exits, reading every adult face for a single piece of information, whether this place was safe. Michael walked over. He dropped to a crouch so their eyes were level. Quote 352, quote, he said. Quote 353, quote. The boy studied him for a long moment, those careful, measuring eyes. Quote 354, quote, he said. Quote 355, quote. He glanced at the crutches. James looked down at them, then back at Michael. He said. Michael said. James watched him the way Emily had watched him on that sidewalk. Same calculation, same slow architecture of trust. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore 360, underscore, underscore, he said. Michael fixed the crutches, adjusted the height, swapped the worn rubber tips from a supply bin, showed James how to check the wing nuts himself so they wouldn't work loose. James followed every step with serious focus. When it was done, the boy stood on the adjusted crutches and took 3 steps. Stopped. Better? Michael asked. James took 3 more. Better. 1 year to the week after the night at South Market, Michael and Emily came back. A Sunday in December, cold enough to see your breath. The market strung with lights that turned the steam from the food carts to gold. They carried insulated bags packed that morning with sandwiches and thermoses and the cookies Emily had baked from scratch the day before with her mother. Sarah was living now in a small apartment 4 miles away. She came for dinner every Sunday, rebuilding things slowly, with intention. They went to the places where people sat alone. The man outside the newspaper stand, the woman on the bench near the loading docks, 2 teenagers beneath the awning of a shuttered hardware store, sharing a single coat between them. Emily moved from person to person on her crutch, the new one, properly fitted, with grip tape she'd picked out herself, navy blue. She handed each person a bag. She looked at them directly. She didn't make a production of it, because her mother had told her once, "That's how you know the good ones. They don't make a big thing of it." When the evening was done, they stood at the place where it had started. That stretch of sidewalk outside Hattie's diner. The exact patch of frozen ground where Michael had crouched with a plate of food, and a small girl had looked at him like he might be someone worth staying near. Emily stood beside him, stared at the spot. Quote 364, quote, she asked. Quote 365, quote. Michael considered it. 366, he said. 367 third. Emily nodded slowly. 368, she said. 369. She looked at the sidewalk another moment. Then she turned her face up to him. Those dark eyes that had witnessed more than any child's eyes should ever have to witness, and had come through the far side of it intact and clear and entirely stubbornly themselves. "I'm glad you were tired that night," she said. "Instead of some other night. I'm glad it was that exact night." "Me too," he said. She slid her free hand into his. Her fingers were warm from the insulated bags. He held on. The market churned around them, loud, bright, the smell of food and cold air. A city doing what cities do, without pausing to notice the small things happening at its edges. A man and a girl on a sidewalk. Nothing worth a second glance. Everything worth a lifetime, if you knew. They walked home, because that's what you do when you found the thing worth returning to. You return, every day, without turning it into a sermon or a parable or some tale told over whiskey. You show up. You remain. And sometimes, if luck has any mercy left in it, remaining is the only thing that ever needed doing at all.